I mean, this Judge Emmett Sullivan, a judge appointed by Bush, Reagan, and Clinton, really, as you pointed out, the wild card in the proceedings today, John King.
Shimon and Pam, stay with us. Come back as we get more information. Perhaps we shouldn't be surprised. Disruption and detours are the order of the day in the age of Trump. Nothing is a straight line anymore. To this point, Carrie, the judge keeps asking Michael Flynn, are you sure? Are you sure? The judge scheduled the hearing. Michael Flynn's attorney said yes, he wanted to be there. What's going on?
I think part of it really is these issues that they raised in their pleadings just within the last several days. And then just last night, the judge ordered the release of these interview transcripts. And so I just think they introduced all of this uncertainty that then the hearing was previously scheduled for today. And so he's making sure he's giving Michael Flynn the opportunity time and time again to take back the opportunity to plea. That is not in Michael Flynn's interest. He already has a deal with the government. They did not charge him with as much as they could have. They could have charged him with Foreign Agents Registration Act charges probably. They probably could have charged him with more acts of 1001 false statements. They ended up charging him with one count, and they recommended no jail time. All the defense had to go in today to do is say, yes, we agree with the government. And instead, they raised all these issues. And so the judge can't ignore them. He has to deal with the pleadings that are in front of him.
And so we'll wait to see what the answers are and how this continues right here. We have some new information from the judge. Let's go right back to Pam Brown.
Coming up, Pam.
All right, John, we're learning about Flynn's team's response to the judge's suggestion of delaying the sentencing. Shimon?
Yeah, so here we go. So the attorney Kellner for Michael Flynn is saying, look, they see what's going on here. They can read it, they can feel it, they're in that courtroom. So no doubt they're sensing that perhaps Michael Flynn is about to get some jail time here. So they're now basically saying, well, Judge, we are prepared to take your honor up on his suggestion of delaying the sentence. It doesn't mean that they're formally asking for the delay. What they're saying is, look, Judge, if this is something you want to do, let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion about it. They have not officially asked him, but they are saying, I'm now being told, they are now asking the judge, they're asking the judge to delay sentencing.
This is significant. Again, for context, both sides, I think it's safe to say, thought they would go in today and that Michael Flynn would likely be given no jail time because that was a recommendation from Robert Mueller's team and that it would be a done deal. But now we are learning that Michael Flynn's attorney, Robert Kellner, is saying, look, we are prepared to delay this because they are hearing what the judge has been saying, questioning the circumstances surrounding their allegations about the FBI interview, giving Michael Flynn multiple outs to withdraw his guilty plea and pointing to the American flag and saying you arguably sold your country out. Right. They're feeling all of this.
And the delay would be because he's still cooperating in the case that was announced yesterday in the Eastern District of Virginia here, about the lobbying work that associates of Michael Flynn were involved in. He is cooperating in that case. I think what the judge is trying to say, that if you come to me and explain to me more about your cooperation in this other case, I may be even more lenient to you. But I think there is some sense that Michael Flynn's in trouble here.
There is a sense, and the prosecutors, we are just learning, have agreed to this, have agreed to the delay in this sentencing. Again, this all has to do with Michael Flynn's cooperation, continuing cooperation, which of course raises the question, Shimon, of why the sentencing was even scheduled for today before that cooperation ended.
Right, and I think the filings from the attorneys certainly concerned, from Michael Flynn's attorneys, have concerned this judge. He's made that very clear. And the fact that the judge is saying that your cooperation is still ongoing, something has irked this judge clearly. He is concerned probably with the leniency that the government may be showing Michael Flynn, and maybe he's not seeing enough in front of him to say, I'm not prepared to say, you know what, you don't deserve any jail time in this case.
The judge saying he was disgusted by the lies. Michael Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI, of course, his conversations with Sergei Kislyak, but the judge also bringing up the fact that he lied in conversations, lied to the FBI about the
we may
UN
have some news here shortly.
Okay, we're just waiting
may
for
get
more.
Delayed. We're just waiting
for some more updates here, John King. Of course, we're giving you the minute-to-minute updates as we get them. This is a very active, fluid situation inside that courtroom. Again, not as we expected this to go today, John King.
Not as we expected, but perhaps we should expect the unexpected and stunning developments. And essentially, Michael Flynn's attorneys finally, correct me if you think I'm taking the hint from the judge that you want to delay this. And in part of the conversations, we're told that Judge Emmett Sullivan has brought up the comparison to the Papadopoulos and the Vanderswan cases. Two other cases. The sentencing has now been delayed. We're told the judge has decided to put it off. Michael Flynn was supposed to be sentenced today. His lawyers finally accepting the hint from the judge that it be delayed. The judge says he wants to see the full extent of Michael Cohen's cooperation with federal prosecutors before he sentences him. A clear indication the judge is prepared to send Michael Flynn to prison today if Michael Flynn wanted to go ahead with it. The judge in the end talking about the Papadopoulos and the Vanderswan cases in which both of those defendants in the special counsel investigation convicted of lying served prison time. Short prison time, but they served prison time. The judge essentially saying, you were the national security advisor to the President of the United States. How do they go to jail? You don't go to jail. That's what I'm taking away from this. And he wants to see, and correct me, yes, there's the Virginia case. His two former lobbying partners who've now been charged with not filing the right paperwork and acting as foreign agents. But there's the redacted part of the Mueller investigation, which is about Russia. By clear hint here is the judge wants to know, what is that about? What's the fruit that's redacted before I decide you don't go to prison?
Well, the judge saw what's redacted. I mean, the judge would have received the information of what was the full scope of his cooperation. The special counsel's office already has in front of him, even though we don't know, more of the information regarding what Michael Flynn was cooperating about in all aspects of the special counsel's investigation. On the point of the comparisons to the other two individuals that did actually serve jail time, there could be an aspect to the judge's consideration of why does the more senior, experienced person get off free, and the two low-level guys, supposedly, that would be the argument. One was a lawyer in private practice. One was a low-level campaign assistant, campaign aide on the National Security Advisory Team, I guess, which was a small team. And so there might be some perspective from the judge that Michael Flynn, maybe he was going to sentence him to a week or two, or just some sort of symbolic level of jail time. But I really do think that the lawyers raised a whole lot of issues in this and made a bit of a mess of it, where they could have just accepted the prosecutor's recommendation, and all of the information that they provided to the judge regarding Michael Flynn's lifetime of service should have been enough to, in addition to his cooperation, go ahead with the prosecutor's recommendation. And
so the hearing is now over. Michael Flynn will not be sentenced today. He wanted to close this chapter and begin to move on with his life. Clearly took the hint from the judge that that was going to include prison time unless he agreed to delay it. And now this stays open. Again, we're looking at the context of Michael Flynn, the highest-ranking official charged by Robert Mueller, at a time when we also know this investigation is expanding, not contracting.
Right. I mean, this is, and the president is still dealing with the question of whether he's going to be interviewed by Mueller, and there are questions that haven't been resolved in terms of his own cooperation. But to have this continuing to hang over him at a time when there's already a lot of anxiety about what the next shoe is to drop in the investigation is not something that's going to make the president very happy. He has a few other things on his mind, and I think part of what he was tweeting about this morning was a real sense of wanting to have some closure, at least on this piece of it. And
to that point, in court today, the argument the president has been making directly contradicted by Michael Flynn, his former national security advisor.
Right, which doesn't put Trump in a very good space, and also just kind of suggests that had Trump not really said anything, it might have gone better for Trump in the end, because this would have all been, open and shut by that point. And then the president kind of, and his allies inserting themselves in the conversation complicated matters more. So stay tuned to the next tweet.
It's a remarkable twist in an investigation that has constant twists. Thanks for joining us in Inside Politics today throughout this breaking news. More insight. Great afternoon.
I'm Brianna Keeler, live from CNN's Washington headquarters. We begin with breaking news. A surprise twist in the sentencing of fired National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Just moments ago, the judge in this case, Judge Sullivan, agreeing to delay Flynn's sentencing. Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller's team is asking the court to go easy on Flynn. They've recommended a sentence of little or no jail time, and now Flynn's lawyer has taken the judge up on his offer of a delay in sentencing so that Flynn can continue to cooperate. I want to bring in CNN senior White House correspondent Pamela Brown. We have our crime and justice reporter Shimon Prokupez with us as well. They're both outside of the federal courthouse there in Washington. Shimon, explain this to us. What happened?
It's hard to explain, right? It's kind of been a wild morning here. Certainly nothing any of us expected here this morning that the judge would go ahead and delay this. Clearly, the judge kept sending signals to Michael Flynn, to his attorneys, that it might be a good idea to delay this. He was not happy about a lot of things, perhaps, not entirely clear. He was using words like treason, and then accusing Michael Flynn of being working as a foreign agent while at the White House. Not true. He had to walk that back. The judge, he had to walk back other statements he made. And then in the end, he kept insisting, look, the judge did too, Michael Flynn's attorney, if you think you want to delay this, just let me know. And eventually, that's what happened. One of the things to keep in mind here is because Michael Flynn is still cooperating in a case involving his associates who were just charged yesterday, the judge thought maybe it might be a good idea to wait until that cooperation is over so that his attorneys, so that Michael Flynn's attorneys could come in and explain more about that cooperation, because it could be favorable to Michael Flynn. And it's clear, and it's very clear here, that this was not going the way Michael Flynn expected. And perhaps the judge here said, you know what, let me give you a break, take some more time, because I think what ultimately would have happened is the judge was ready to sentence him to jail.
And I think what you saw there was Michael Flynn's lawyers essentially taking the hint, hearing those judges' strong words, that this was a disgrace, pointing to the flag and saying that you arguably sold your country. Again, the judge sort of walked back some of those comments, but what he made clear in that courtroom is that this case is different from the other defendants who pleaded guilty and were sentenced. He made it clear that, look, you were the former national security advisor. You made these lies to the FBI inside your office in the West Wing. Evan Perez, you were inside that courtroom. Bring us in there in this stunning turn of events.
Well, you know, I think in the end, the judge, I think, made an impression with the lawyers, and they decided that they'd rather take a chance and wait 90 days. Again, the judge just decided that he would set sentencing for a date in March, giving, as Shimon says, Michael Flynn time to again, continue his cooperation. One of the things that Flynn's lawyers raised in the court there today was that he might be called to testify in the case of his associates who were just charged in Alexandria, Virginia yesterday. So again, this is something that the judge is willing to take into account. And as Shimon points out, it was clear that despite the fact that the prosecutors were recommending no jail time, the defendants, the defense was saying no jail time. The judge was not going along with that, and so he was giving them every chance he had to be able to say, you want to delay this? Do you want to delay this? Because I can take into account your further cooperation. It was a stunning turn, Pamela, because it was not what we expected. You know, we've been in sentencings over the years, and these things are usually, 30 minutes. You go through.
Especially when both sides agree, they're on the same page.
I also think, and you know this judge because you've covered this judge before. Yes. Look, I've talked to lawyers who've been before this judge, and they all said this he's a wild card. He likes to speak, he likes to say a lot, and clearly he was sending a message in some ways about this investigation, about what's been going on here. And this was the wild card kind of going in.
Right. It was an interesting way for the wild card to go, though, because a lot of us were expecting, because this judge takes a dim view of any misconduct by the government, we thought that because the defense had raised the possibility of misconduct on the part of the FBI, that he would take a hard line against the government. Instead, what he did
that seemed to backfire, right?
Oh, it completely backfired. And right after the recess, one of the first things that Rob Kellner, one of Michael Flynn's lawyers, stood up in court and said, Judge, essentially, do not punish Michael Flynn for a filing that his lawyers made. And again, the judge, as you pointed out, was sort of walking back some of his more harsh critiques of Michael Flynn, but it was clear.
There was backpedaling sort of on both sides.
But it was also, by the way, the judge raised one other thing. Michael Flynn's lawyers sort of offered as a comparison the fact that David Petraeus got a misdemeanor for pleading guilty to sharing classified information with somebody that wasn't authorized to have it. That was a big deal, and the judge sort of raised that and said, look, I don't agree with that sentence. I think that he should have gotten more than that, essentially taking a shot at the Justice Department for the way they handled that case. And he also said that essentially Michael Flynn and David Petraeus are not in the same league. So
that's not good news for Michael Flynn's side.
Unsolicited thing for him to say.
I also think for the special counsel's office, which is priding itself in some ways of getting these cooperators and getting people to help them out on their cases, this could have potentially been bad for them too.
Yes.
Had he been sentenced to jail time, because they are asking, and then you see Michael Flynn walking out now with protesters outside.
Right. And what's so interesting is we see him walk outside of this courthouse after a very different outcome. Let's listen in.
Yeah, you have both sides there. You have some a sizable group of people who showed up to show support for General Flynn. They have signs saying General Flynn is a hero and so on. And then, of course, there's some counter-protesters who are out there saying, lock him up, which, of course, recalls the chant that Michael Flynn shouted on the stage at the Republican National Convention. Look, a lot of us were so surprised by today and certainly did not expect that he was going to end up where he was at the end here today.
He thought he would walk outside of that courthouse today with no jail time and perhaps probation. He is walking out now after being scolded by the judge and a delayed sentencing.
And the judge essentially raising the prospect that he could have locked him up. So again, the chant that made Michael Flynn famous at the time of the Republican National Convention turned against him here today by what the judge said in court. And one of the last things, by the way, at the end of the hearing, Michael Flynn's lawyers asked to speak privately to the judge before they left. So clearly there was some things that they wanted to make sure they reassure the judge, again, that Michael Flynn shouldn't be punished for things that his lawyers did.
And what was so interesting, we were talking about this, that it seemed like Robert Mueller's prosecutor in the room was trying to sort of come to Michael Flynn's defense too, saying, look, he's been very helpful, he's been cooperating in this case, and when he was asked by the judge whether he should have been charged with treason, he didn't go there. I mean, it is clear that was not under consideration.
And after the recess, he clarified even further and said, look, he met with us 19 times and never once did we contemplate that he was guilty of anything treasonous. So again, they were very, very careful and as you said, supportive of General Flynn, because I think they realized what a bad position he had suddenly found himself in, and essentially trying to give him a little bit of a rescue in front of this judge.
This judge was trying to rescue him, right? I mean, how many times was he like, do you want to delay this? Should we do this another time? Do you want to postpone this?
Do you want to withdraw your guilty plea?
Yes.
So I found that so surprising, and just continuously how the judge kept coming at the defense team and Michael Flynn. Are you sure you want to do this today? And after the break, it's clear the attorneys finally said, you know what? We're about
if we don't delay it, we could get jail time. So here you have a situation, Breonna Keeler, where Michael Flynn, the national security advisor, the former advisor to President Trump, walked into that courthouse today, likely thinking he was going to get no jail time from the judge, then walking out after a very different sentencing proceeding than he expected, than likely Robert Mueller's team expected. Now the sentencing is delayed, and we'll have to wait and see what happens, Brianna.
Yeah, I imagine he walked in there today thinking, soon this will all be over, and here it is still hanging over his head, and we'll be seeing what he'll be doing in terms of cooperating. Evan Perez, Shimon Prokupez, Pamela Brown, thank you so much. I want to bring in some of our legal and political minds here to help us break all of this down, and we're going to need some help here. Kara Scannell, CNN reporter. We have CNN political director David Chalian. Kim Whaley is a former associate independent counsel in the Whitewater investigation. Michael Zeldin with us. He's a CNN legal analyst. He was Robert Mueller's special assistant at the Department of Justice. And joining us from New Haven, Connecticut, CNN legal and national security analyst Asha Rangappa. So, Asha, when you look at this, the judge admonishing Michael Flynn, saying that he had sold out his country, taking a recess, coming back, backpedaling a little bit on that, but making it clear that he was not perhaps going to be as friendly to Michael Flynn as the Mueller team had asked for or suggested. What was your reaction to that?
This judge don't play. I mean, look, you don't make those kinds of claims in a court document that's alleging serious malfeasance, misconduct by the FBI that calls into question your plea deal, your plea agreement, and then not expect the judge to, A, question you about it, and then when you backtrack to get, I think, understandably upset. I mean, you know, this was his chance if he wanted to change his plea to do it. He didn't, which means he wasn't making those assertions in good faith. And I think what you saw here was the judge then accepting the plea, the guilty plea, and saying you sold out your country. And that this is a very serious crime. And I think that beyond Michael Flynn, should worry everyone else who is in the crosshairs of this investigation.
And I wonder, Michael Zeldin, we heard Evan reporting there, we heard Shimon reporting. This is a judge who has, as Shimon put it, I think a dim view of misconduct by the government, which might explain why Michael Flynn's lawyers had put in that pleading, essentially, oh, well, Michael Flynn was caught off guard by the FBI, something that ended up backfiring on him.
Absolutely. It was a mistake, as it turned out. They said, we accept what Mueller has to say, that is no jail time. But we want to bring some additional facts to your attention, which spoke to this government misconduct in the interview. So part one of the sentencing hearing was the judge saying to Flynn, are you wanting to remove this guilty plea and contest the hearing? They said, no, 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 no. Then they said, fine, now that that's over, let me turn to the seriousness of the offense. And I, Judge Sullivan, believe this was a very, very serious offense. That's when it went off on his treason and stuff. That's when Flynn's lawyers determined this judge may put my client in jail.
Can I ask you, though, Kim, I wonder what you think about this, the fact that actually the judge said some things that were not factually accurate, and how concerning that is. That he said you were an unregistered agent of a foreign country while serving as the national security advisor to the president of the United States. Factually, that's not exactly right. He was an unregistered foreign agent under the designation of the law at a certain point, but he ended up having to backpedal. How odd is that for a judge?
Well, I mean, the judge has law clerks that prepare bench memos. There's a lot of paper they need to read. My guess is this judge realized this was his moment, or the moment of the federal judiciary, to weigh in a meaningful way on this entire situation, what's going on politically around the Mueller investigation. That is, federal judges have life tenure. They're not political.
But is it, which, and maybe it's understandable in the case of this judge, but when he does it this way, what does that say about the legal proceedings in this circumstance and the faith that people may have in the system?
Well, we're seeing a number of mistakes. We saw mistakes on behalf of the Mr. Flynn's lawyers. That was a mistake. What I don't know, I'd have to think it through, whether while he was national security advisor versus before when he was lobbying on behalf of Turkey is a meaningful legal distinction.
Yeah.
I think with respect to treason, the Supreme Court has held treason is not a crime unless we're in wartime. We're not in wartime, but there are treason-like criminal statutes that I don't think is completely beyond the pale that the judge would be drawing that
And perhaps
connection.
the judge sees, hey, you were unregistered at this point, and then you go on to be the national security advisor. It's not appropriate.
Yeah,
I need to get in a quick break in what is really it's almost reality television in a way, from all of this drama happening at the courthouse to Michael Flynn's car peeling away from the courthouse. We are standing by to hear from the White House. Sarah Sanders is set up to brief reporters any minute. We're going to take you there live.